You know, I'm a pretty big fan of. My computer doesn't charge anymore.
That's a good sign.
Yeah, that's a great sign. You know what's also a good sign? When you send a horror series to space and it doesn't suck.
That's the best sign. I think Leprechaun has taught us the lesson that once you reach space,
woo,
you've gone to the highest of places.
Yeah.
Literally. Not necessarily the best.
Nope.
Definitely the highest, as in physically speaking.
Because you don't want it anywhere near you because it sucks.
Yeah. It's usually the death knell.
It's usually.
A lot of people will agree that the Friday the 13th series died the moment it went to space.
Yeah.
And there's been several other series, most of which escape me at this moment.
Yeah.
But one of them that did go to space and seemed to never die was Hellraiser.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Hellraiser Bloodline, which we're talking about today. This is, by the way, our 10 grillionth take.
Yep. Gotta say, it's the best intro, and I set it up, so I'm pretty proud of that.
That is good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
But I'm going downhill from here. It's pretty good.
The point is, we did catch up on an old favorite, which I know you liked it too.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've dug it for a while, and I was just wondering, well, mainly because we're doing this series, but just wondering if that would hold up, if it would hold any water, if it would hold. There's another hold thing in there.
Don't go into a tangent about holding things.
So anyway, I'm holding water right now because I gotta pee. But the point is,
I'm holding fees.
We indulged in a little Hellraiser Bloodline, and what are your overall impressions now that we've come fresh off of it by like about 70 hours?
18 takes. I liked it. It's ooh, I stopped myself. It is a quite spectacular sequel to the series. It shits on part 3. And like I said, it survives going to space. So that's good. Pretty.
I'm going to let that one go.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, see, now I'm fucking up. So that's good.
Yeah.
Pretty good, you might say.
I like it.
In case you're wondering what the fuck this pretty good shit is.
That's all I said in the last
video. I was about to throttle someone because the only response was, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, man, this has long been a favorite of mine. I do think it's very unfairly maligned, and upon rewatching it, it still had the same impact it did on me back then. It still felt cool. It still felt like a good and satisfying ending to the series, because really, even though the series continues past this point, this is really the conclusion. You get, it ties a bow on everything in the future sequences, because there are future sequences in this, and as silly as that sounds, if you haven't seen this movie, that's going to sound retarded as fuck. Why the hell are the Cenobites in space? Answer.
In the future.
In the future, no less. Answer, because the plot actually calls for it, which is, hey, surprising. Wouldn't you know it? Space actually being used in a legitimate way. And it's interesting to note that the movie was originally written kind of as an anthology, and it was just going to be 3 separate stories, and you kind of get that in the sense that the storylines cover the past, the present, and the future, but now they're tied together. And this was actually something that was added by longtime screenwriter, at least at that point, Peter Atkins, who decided, hey, there's something in the original source material of The Hellbound Heart talking about Philippe Le Marchand, the man that made the configuration, the Lambent configuration, that summoned these creatures. Why don't we use that as a way to tie these 3 storylines together? And as a result of that, the whole thing took on a more linear tone, which I think ultimately made everything a little bit stronger than it originally might have been at just as an anthology.
Yeah, if there was no tie to put them together, it'd be kind of weird.
Yeah, it would have been.
I mean, it might have worked, mind you, but yeah, it's better to have an actual tie putting things together.
Yeah, especially if we're going to bring everything to an end.
Yeah.
It was the way to go. And I guess it's kind of like the series has become an anthology series at this point.
Yeah.
So, hey, somewhere along the way you got anthology anyway, because every movie after this is basically just a standalone story. But, yeah, man, it was an interesting approach to things to do it this way, to bring a lot more scope into the picture, which was something that was gone the moment part 3 started, but was very present in part 1 and especially part 2. You know, we got that big scale feeling. Here we do the big scale feeling without ever having to waste millions upon millions of dollars trying to evoke that through effects. And that in itself is a pretty relevant achievement here, in that it achieves that mostly through dialogue and what is implied and alluded to by the characters. Most notably, the dialogue between Angelique and anybody around her. Angelique being a new character introduced into this. That gives us a good idea of the time frame wherein Hell changed into what we see in the previous Hellraiser movies. So all that was really fucking cool. It's the thing that brought the director on board, the idea that it was something different. And for anybody that doesn't know, this movie is actually credited to Alan Smithy, which is usually, it used to be anyway. I know they changed it to something else.
I don't think they can use it anymore.
But Alan Smithy used to be what movies would be credited to if the director disowned them. And that probably gave this movie part of its bad reputation among people. Aside from the fact that people were coming off of part 3 and the space thing, there was a lot of pre-hate for this thing. And this probably didn't help. But it's worthy to note that Kevin Yeager, the director, left because of studio suggestions, and the film was already shot and the studio just wanted more Pinhead in it. And what was added is mostly at the beginning of the movie, which I think works, man. It really didn't change much what was going on anyway, but he did feel the need to take his name off of it. Somebody else shot those reshoots. And what do you think? Do you think he should have kept his name on this thing? It's all, he's also the guy that wrote Sleepy Hollow, which Tim Burton directed, and he is of course most well renowned for being a makeup effects artist. His most notable work being his work on the Nightmare on Elm Street series. But do you think he should have kept this thing? Do you think now he should go, hey, you know what? This is my work.
I don't know. I mean, in a way, I kind of commend the dude, because he's like, this ain't my thing. They changed it. I'm outies, right? There's some commendable aspect to that. I mean, if they had done that to my movie and I went to see it and it was this movie, I would have been like, oh crap, should have kept my name on it. It's actually pretty cool. Or as I would say, it's pretty good. But I mean, I don't know what he thinks about it.
Yeah, I really hope his mind has changed. Of course, like any creator, you don't want to compromise your art, and you don't want to see it change.
I don't know exactly how much, he of how much behind the scenes drama he was going through. Yeah, maybe it was just like, I'm freaking done with this movie.
The Weinsteins are notoriously, obviously nowadays we know that, but back in the day, even they are notoriously involved in pictures, even pictures they don't give a shit about.
Yeah.
But for some reason, apparently they give a shit about the Hellraiser series, because Bob Weinstein has been involved in this series since part 3, and by all accounts, he seems to like actually see the movies, and so I don't understand what the fuck's going on there. But we don't know the drama.
Yeah.
And we do know like people like Clive Barker have come to hate the Weinsteins, and so something might have happened that would have added to that. But
if we're going on the movie alone,
if I were him, in retrospect, I would have been like, you know what, this fucking little thing right here is pretty cool, because I think, and I am pretty sure you think too, by what I hear now, this movie deserves a lot better than they got. And but we'll talk about that. If you haven't seen this movie, it's kind of hard to explain the entirety of it, as it is basically 3 storylines in one. Suffice it to say, this does provide a backdrop to the origins of the box, the politics of hell, if you will. The storyline follows the bloodline of the box's creator from the past into the future, and provides a satisfying conclusion to the events. Along the way, we get some new Cenobites to chew on, and for them to chew on us. And let's just get into that right now. Cenobites. What'd you think, and how much better were they than the ones in Part 3?
My naked nutsack would be better than the ones in Part 3.
And that's not a good sight.
It's not good. It's disturbingly shriveled.
Oh.
Speaking of disturbingly shriveled, I like these Cenobites. They're pretty cool. Especially like the old Chatterer Beast. I keep saying Chatterer Beast because that's what... But it's actually Chatter Beast. This is an effect that could have sucked because it's a big old dog. And it kind of looked... I mean, it was like a puppet, right?
Mm-hmm.
It looked good, though. And then they used it pretty effectively.
Yeah, even when there's the chase sequences with it, it looks pretty fantastic.
The few things that look a little bit off, I think were intentional. Like the super long arms. The front arms. Like, that looks cool.
As far as I understand, he's supposed to have been a human at one point. So,
I mean, they don't tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Cenobites. I'm pretty sure the Cenobites aren't like, hey... We should add some dogs to the mix because, whatever. But yeah.
According to the back of this toy, he's probably one of the oldest Cenobites.
Yeah, it makes sense. Having distorted his body to the point of completely.
Well, I mean, I don't know how canonical these back of the
canonical toys.
But if you're going by the back of the toy, he's one of the oldest Cenobites.
Yeah, man. Pretty fantastic effects. The Cenobites look pretty great. And thankfully, they go back to Cenobites that look at least creatively fresh and neat versus the ones that just don't make any fucking sense in Part 3. So, yeah, my favorite one was Angelique, but that more has to do, not so much with her look, which is pretty awesome, mind you, but it has much more to do with the depth of her character, which spans both the Cenobite look and before. So, that was pretty cool. But a lot of this movie was also interesting because it went back to something that it needed to go back to, which Part 3 completely ignored. And that's resting the story not on the Cenobites, but on people. And this laid mostly on the shoulders of our main character, which actually is 3 main characters, all played by the same guy, as they are the same bloodline.
For the first time in the series, it's a guy.
Oh yeah, that's true. The first time a male lead is in the series. A male lead, by the way. Usually in Hollywood it's the female. Well, at least back in the day. Now it's getting fixed, but usually it was like the females are vapid and kind of thin characters. But it was actually the opposite in the Hellraiser series for a while there, as the males were just razor thin, especially that fucking guy from Part 1.
Or the... Oh shit, what was the line he said? What
the? Jesus Christ. So those guys were like non-characters, but this guy is our first male lead, and they give him a lot to chew on. They give him 3 roles to play, basically, all in the same bloodline, adequately enough. And man, he was pretty cool. French-Canadian actor, so he has an accent that might kind of throw off some people, because, it's not exactly Americanized. But I'm sure the French Canadians loved it. Mm-hmm. So there's that. And the rest of the cast, I think the one that shines the most, besides obviously Pinhead, who always steals the show, is, what was her name? Valentina Vargas, I think, who played Angelique. And again, a lot of the reason this story would work had to do with her and her stance and where she stood opposite to and/or in line with Pinhead's character. And I think she pulled that off. I do know that they cut some scenes with her in the present part of the storyline, so it kind of clips off. There was supposed to be a standoff basically between her that was a lot more defined than the way it was portrayed, and as a result, I felt that kind of robbed a little bit of it. But she's fantastic enough, and she does hold her ground, in the presence of Pinhead, which was cool. It would have been really neat to see a lot more of the clashing of ideals, because they are beings that came from the same realm. It's just they differ, a lot in the way they think, the way things should go. It would have been really neat to see that. But what we do get, you get the picture, you understand what's going on. At least I thought so, and so that's pretty cool. All the actors are pretty suitable.
Yeah,
serviceable. You said in
3.
One of the 1 billion takes. You don't expect A-list actors.
We're not talking some freaking Anthony Hop, although he's in some garbage nowadays.
Oh man, Transformers.
We're not talking Daniel Day-Lewis. We ain't talking freaking some other high quality guy who I can't think of right now.
We're not even talking Wesley Snipes here.
No.
What you expect out of the series is somebody that can bring across the ideas, and these people do it adequately fine. Thankfully, they're not the horrible nightmare of actors that was that Brood in part 3. None of that garbage, thankfully. Everybody's pretty cool. Pinhead, most notably Pinhead, is back in form.
Yeah.
He feels like Pinhead again.
He's not a dumbass who yells at everything that goes wrong slightly.
Yeah.
Slightly wrong, I meant to say.
Very collected.
He's what was it that I said in the previous? He's a skunk with his full stink or something?
Yeah.
It wasn't good.
He's a skunk with a full stink,
Yeah.
not just a skunk.
Yeah.
Although I guess a skunk with a stink would be worse, but what I'm saying here is he works.
Yeah.
Like a
he
skunk
wasn't
with
neutered like he was in part 3, like a skunk without his stink gland.
Yeah.
This one, he had a stink gland, and it was extra stinky.
In the
But
best
that's a
way.
good way, yeah, in a good
because
way.
it's a skunk.
Because you want the skunk to stink.
And boy, does this skunk stink, but in a good way. Yeah, man. Pinhead actually, like you said, he's not neutered. He's not stupid beyond belief.
Yeah, he sounds cool.
He has great lines again. You know, he just feels majestic. He feels powerful. He feels, I don't want to say like he feels vain, but there's like confidence to him, and it's back.
Yeah.
You know, even the way his voice comes off, everything is fixed. That was completely destroyed in part 3. He's back, baby, and that's good. We needed him back, and that saved us a fucking shitload of trouble right there.
Yeah.
In fact, the movie could have sucked, and him being just in form would have been, a hell of a gift. But thankfully, it didn't suck, and he was in form, so that's a plus.
Despite the fact that it's basically the same thing he's doing in part 3 in this one.
Yeah, that's also something worthy to note, that in part 3, his motives are so sudden. Like, what the fuck? I guess he's trying to take over Earth?
Yeah, they're so sudden that it just
What?
comes off like he's going to be like, oh, I'm going to have some fun on Earth for
Yeah.
myself. It doesn't even seem like he's bringing hell in.
Yeah, and it doesn't even come off as fun or not even like
Yeah.
a horror romp or nothing like that. It's just like, why is he doing this? He's a bad guy, so inherently, I guess he would want to do something like this, but it's
why?
it's never, expounded upon. You're just like, I guess he was fine in hell all this time, and I guess now he wants
this weird phase. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm gonna rebel from hell now.
it was his millennial angst.
Yep.
But here we understand it's laid in the groundwork of the movie. We understand that hell is trying to take over Earth, is trying to reach its tendrils out to the mortal plane since a long time ago. Because again, Angelique's character sets that up. So that's good. We understand that this is a thing that hell wants to do. So when Pinhead wants to do it, oh look, there's a reason for it. Not just, hey, I'm going to create some Cenobites now and go blowing shit up and icicling people to death. Ooh, none of that, thankfully. We actually get a good sound reason for what he does, for the conflict between him and Angelique, all that stuff. Very well done. Never blatant, not in your face, all done in illusions and dialogue. Spot on. Great. So we talked about the effects kind of by talking about the Cenobites, but there are some non-Cenobite related effects and some Cenobite related effects that don't really hit 100%, but that's not really a thing it's not a strike against the movie, I think, because again, this was 1996, and what I'm talking about is some of the scenes are assisted by computer generated imagery, so just imagine, this is the mid-90s, CGI wasn't exactly its top form, so the CGI in some scenes, though minimal and used sparsely, doesn't 100% work, but it does communicate what's going on, and it's not distractingly awful like in part 3, and thankfully it is very brief. Most notable is the scene at the beginning with a robot proxy being used to open a box. Although we have a physical effect, it does do a close-up cutaway to a CGI.
Yeah, and I guess maybe they tried doing it with the puppet and it just didn't look good or something.
Whatever the reason,
so they animated it.
Kind of looks assy.
Yeah,
but it doesn't take you out of the movie.
That's definitely the worst of the CGI effects.
Yeah.
It's just like, ooh, that looks like a cartoon.
And again, it's very minimal, and if you're reasonable, you understand why it's done. You know, oh well, look, obviously, this had to be done this way. But again, it's very sparsely used. The only other times that it's used is especially with the I'm sorry, not the wire twins, with the twins. There's a scene later in the movie where one of their kills is assisted by CGI, and they have the tact to cut away from it at the right times, and so you only get a very few spots of it. But overall, thankfully, this thing is not drenched in CGI, and thankfully, what CGI is there is just used to assist, even though sometimes it's not at its greatest. It's nothing like in Part 3 where for some reason there's a fucking CGI face and a CGI icicle and a CGI fucking nalga, for some damn reason. Thankfully, none of that, so Saved by the Bell.
I will say the space CG looked pretty good, surprisingly.
Yeah, that is really surprising. And that's probably where they spent the majority of the CG money. This thing
definitely wasn't on that robot hand.
Definitely wasn't. You know what? The robot hands didn't even bother me. It was the box.
The box looked like
the
shit,
box.
yeah.
The robot hands. I mean, it's robot hand. Obviously, it didn't look 100% real, but it didn't look horrible.
The box looked bad.
The box looked bad, but whatever. It was just that one little scene, but
it does make a return at the end.
It does, unfortunately, but again, very sparsely used, tactfully used, thankfully. But yeah, the space stuff, that's probably where they spent most of it. Thankfully, the sets are fucking sets inside the space station. But of course, exteriors. Obviously, they didn't pay for a fucking space station to shoot it into space. Obviously, they don't have fucking shuttles, so you get a little CGI there. But you know what? It works. It works. It looks decent. It looks good. It looks better than some fucking shit nowadays in the sci-fi movies. So that's right. I'm apparently 80 in the sci-fi movies.
Oh, those sci-fi movies nowadays, they look like shit. It isn't like back in the 50s with the Star Treks.
That was the 50s?
That was the 60s.
I guess it was. No, the 60s. Okay, we're getting off on a fucking tangent here. Speaking of the 60s, the score in this is brought to us by a different fella. Not Christopher Young of the first two, unfortunately, but thankfully,
he's trying to sound like it.
Yeah, he's really reaching for that feel, and for the most part, achieves it in terms of evoking that feeling. Doesn't get to the majestic heights of Young, but it's nice. It's a good score. It's orchestral. Thankfully, it's nothing like Part 3, and thankfully, they don't use any fucking metal tracks and fucking disco shit.
Disco?
Apparently there was disco in it. But anyway, the point is, thankfully none of that garbage. It's a legitimate score, and it really works. Spot on. Love it. I love that they returned to that. Pretty cool, man.
You can actually hear it this time.
Yeah, that's another big plus. And the visual look of the movie, it's not really in line with the first two in terms of the aesthetics of that. Thankfully, it looks nothing like the third one, because then it would just look like a cheap piece of shit.
It would look like feast.
But you do get tastes of something, like the Pinhead scenes. He's lit somewhat like he is in the second one, but there's like a starker approach to the lighting, almost to the point of causing like a blur effect on him, which really actually works for him. So that's pretty neat. You get a feeling of almost like a temperature around him, like a coldness, which again works for the character. You noted,
they use more cooler colors in the space areas, the future segments. We're talking more blues, which again is a theme in space, which we noticed. I guess blue speaks space to people. The middle area, the present day stuff, just kind of looks like a 90s present day movie. Doesn't have a particular taste of look compared to the other two. And in the past, we're talking warms, we're talking some reds, we're talking some browns, we're talking Adam Scott being a dick.
And Adam Scott is in this, and it's fucking weird because he's playing a evil sorcerer's apprentice. Yeah. So that's pretty fucking strange.
I know there was supposed to be a scene with like Cenobites back in that, but I guess it got cut. There's pictures you can find of him, of that little dude, the little sorcerer guy. him, and apparently he had like a bunch of little dudes that were going to become Cenobites, but they cut him, the effects. But you can still find the pictures online. So I'll look that up. It's pretty interesting looking.
Take a video of that.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, man, very underappreciated entry into the series. And I think, again, partially has to do with what people thought it was going to be. You know, the lingering effects of Part 3, who was producing it, etc. Whatever it is, put any preconceptions, leave them at the door. Just go in and give this a watch again. If you haven't seen it, watch it for the first time, appreciate it, because there is a lot here, and it is thankfully a return to form. This was unfortunately the last of the series to hit the theaters. And yes, I said unfortunately because there's some later installments that I think are pretty damned good, but we will explore those as we go along, reaching our ultimate goal of watching Hellraiser Judgment, the newest installment.
Can't wait for Hellworld and Revelations.
Man. To say the least, although I am, and I know you are too, one of the few people that appreciate some of the other installments, which are usually just, everybody's just like, they all fucking suck from this point on. We don't think that's true. There are some in here that deserve to be called garbage. But we will get those. Spoiler, it's probably going to be the one with that fucking cheap-ass looking pinhead.
Look, if there's any movie who's going to probably be Part 3, it's going to be the one with the cheap-ass looking pinhead.
Shit.
But I don't know, man. Part 3
is bad.
It can't be that bad.
It can't be. It just can't.
We haven't seen
Even
that one. We haven't seen from Hellworld.
I saw Hellworld.
You saw Hellworld?
Yep.
Well, there you go. Ruined my little... We haven't seen Revelations, I think it's called. We haven't seen that one.
So, that you haven't seen Hellworld.
Yeah.
Revelations. I remember loathing Hellworld so much that I never bought the fucking DVD. And I was like determined to buy every single one. Did not buy that one.
But I did buy it for you, though. And you were like, serious, then?
Yeah, that's like, true. But
it has Henry Cavill in it.
But yeah, who knows, man? Maybe upon revisiting, we'll be a little bit more lenient. But keep tuned in to find out what the fuck as we go down the line. We will be eventually getting to the new one. In the meantime,
we got a recap.
Oh yes, that's right. How dare I forget? Last thoughts and final rating.
Last thoughts. I like this film. I don't want to say it's pretty good, but it is pretty good. Compared to Part 3, this shit is like freaking Citizen Kane. No, screw that shit. Compared to this shit is Paddington 2.
2?
Yeah, not even Part 1, Part 2. But even in the Hellraiser scale, it's pretty good. I would say it's probably the third best that so far that we've seen. It's not saying much since we've only done 4. But it's definitely better in freaking Part 3. And it does follow. It is a good follow-up to 1 and 2. I don't think it reaches those heights because those are pretty hard to reach heights. Mm-hmm. But it is ambitious in what it's trying to do. It does introduce the world to Adam Scott.
Apparently.
So that's interesting. And yeah, it adds cool little mythos tidbits. No one will know why I say it that way. I don't either. Anyway, I give it a final rating of 7 out of 10 in the Hellraiser scale, which compared to Part 1, Part 3, this is freaking Part 10. That made no sense.
All right.
This is a 10 compared to Part 3 is what I was trying to say.
Yeah, in the Hellraiser scale, I give it a 7.5. I think it's a very worthy addition to the series. I think it stands with... I shouldn't say it stands with them, but it does feel like it belongs in the company of the first two. And yeah, very pleased, man. It also provides a conclusion to the series, so you can really stop watching it here because it does give you finality and it is pretty damn satisfying. And yeah, overall everything is great in it. The effects, it did provide me one of my early masturbatory fodders in Angelique, so that's pretty cool.
All right.
And yeah, thumbs up. 3 thumbs up.
Conan O'Brien's in it.
Cause yeah, those guys did look like Conan O'Brien. Anyway, this has been Ahab.
Oh yeah, 7.5.
And We're out. Hit like, share, subscribe, and those notification buttons. That's right. There's more than one notification button. Hit them all.
They're twins.
Twin buttons. Hit them all, because we're out of here. Nude.
It's pretty good that we finally have one we can use.
I mean, that's good.